What is going on? I want to welcome you from Half Court for today, Tuesday, July 26th. Apparently, the day that Teal is back in the Pistons community. So, I want to say to all of you out there who are saying that Teal should not be back, go out yourselves. I am Sean Murphy alongside my man, Jeff Iafredi. Jeff, you're the thing that I am second happiest to see today, other than those Teal jerseys. But nonetheless, you are still on that list, my friend. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm happy to be in that list, and I'm excited too, Sean. I know we made the video yesterday. We did a live stream, and I'm excited as well. I love having the conversation though. Like I love hearing people's viewpoints, especially Uncle T, Terry Foster today on air talking about how much he hates him. Man, it's comical. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, man, I get it. But at the same time, Teal's back. So who cares? It's our time to shine, man. That's really
Yes,
all that
sir.
matters.
Rewrite the narrative.
Yeah, exactly. Rewrite the narrative, change the story. But with that, we got to talk about a player that's looking to rewrite their own narrative as far as their career goes, and that is Marvin Bagley the third, the guy who was signed this summer to a 3-year, $37.5 million contract, a contract that around the league people were looking and going, "What? Pistons paid him that amount of money?" However, if you look at the cap space right now, that is not even the highest paid contract on the team. Currently, Kelly Olynyk is the highest paid Piston going into next season. So with that, Jeff, what were your thoughts when you saw the Marvin Bagley contract? What do you think about his value that he brings to the team? And what do you think we can see as far as his development over the course of time in Detroit?
When Marvin Bagley got to Detroit, you saw immediately how much he was welcomed. He had an organization that believed in him, and I think that's what he was missing in Sacramento. And you saw him much happier. I mean, despite coming off the bench, he was very productive. I love the contract. I don't mind it. I mean, what were you going to pay him? The mid-level exception, which is like 11 million. So now you're really paying him essentially like a million more than that. I don't mind it at all. It also fits the timeline for when you need to extend Sadiq Bey. All the other guys, including maybe even Cade Cunningham. You saw the Grizzlies give John Moran a big contract. So it makes sense financially as well because you're paying him $12 million. Even if he becomes an even better player, you're still on a $12.5 million annual contract. So I love it, man. Troy just keeps working magic. And for people who actually had a problem with it, what would he have gotten? Like, I don't think you're paying Marvin what 6-7 million. I mean, 12 is a little above what we probably talked about. We said 10 to 13, but still, it's on the upper half of that. But
Mm-hmm.
I got no problem with it, man.
Yeah, it's still within the range. And you
Mm-hmm.
talk about a guy, you not only talk about how glad he was to be here, but you talk about he was in a system and in a team that was utilizing him the way that he was actually meant to be utilized. They're not asking him to be anything that he isn't. He's playing the brand of basketball that makes him succeed. And Dwayne Casey talks about, he's a guy that was able to get 19, 20 points a game when there were no plays that were being drawn up for Marvin Bagley. The offense wasn't being run through Bagley at all. So for him to
Right.
go out there and earn that offense and create that offense himself and get those opportunities on his own volition, it brings the value of someone that can come in and be a solid sixth man scoring big off of the bench, someone that can bring that type of value long term. And if you're looking at a playoff run, and if you're looking like down the line, like if the Pistons have, a starting lineup of Jalen Duren, Isaiah Stewart, Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, and Sadiq Bey, you're able to bring Marvin Bagley off the bench as your scoring big, a guy who can come in and play pick and roll, a guy who can get in the post and create his own offense, a guy who can perhaps stretch the floor as
Mm-hmm.
well. I think there's a ton of value there. And then you forget, but the guy's only 23 years old. So the narrative is not written on a guy like Marvin Bagley III. It's interesting to me how like guys like Markelle Fultz were like, oh, well, you can't call him a bust yet. His career isn't entirely written. He hasn't played a whole lot. Like his time's not completely written. But like a guy like Marvin Bagley, bust, even though he's literally 23 years old and has insane athleticism and great measurables. And Dwayne Casey even talked about it with Marvin. He came in, and one of the things that he said was that this is the first time in a long time that he's enjoyed and has been looking forward to coming to practice and has been looking forward to being a
Mm-hmm.
part of team functions. So you have a guy who's revitalized, who's grown up, but also has his joy and his love for the game back. That's a mixture of breakout potential season right there. So I think honestly we could look at Marvin Bagley in a year or two similarly to how we looked at Christian Wood as far as how he was able to really revitalize his career in Detroit. And I think there's a lot of reasons why. And I think, when you're talking about that bench unit potentially like down the line, I think him and Killian Hayes can be a great pairing off the bench.
Yeah, he fits the timeline as well. I mean, the Pistons aren't winning games, so it was a great swing at Marvin Bagley. He got to go out and just play basketball. No one breathing over his shoulder. And I think the difference is too, and I like De'Aaron Fox, but I think the biggest difference with Cade Cunningham is he really wants you to succeed. I think that's the difference. Like he's very selfless. I'm not saying
He's a
De'Aaron's
team first
selfish.
guard.
Absolutely. Team first. I think that was the best case for Marvin Bagley, too. Now, don't get me wrong. I think the question mark I have is he just has to stay healthy. That is the only thing I have with Marvin Bagley. The rest I'm not concerned about. I mean, you talked about it, him coming off the bench with Killian Hayes. You already have Livers and Duran and company. Like you're deep. Like you're 6, 7, 8 deep. And if we see in the finals this year, it's told us one thing: depth. You need, we're in the super team era, but you need guys like Marvin Bagley. It's not about, I'm over this whole expectation thing with Marvin. We have to get past the fact that he was drafted right before Luka Doncic, Trae Young and these guys. That's over. Like
Yeah, for the
whatever you have with
Pistons,
Marvin.
you shouldn't care about that. You should care about, what the value is for the Kings? His value and his expectation was the number 2 overall pick. In Detroit, it's a couple second round picks, Josh Jackson and Trey Lyles. That's what we gave up to get Marvin Bagley.
Crazy.
And now we're just spending $12.5 million a season. So not much of an investment. A guy who could be a total high upside move, a guy who could potentially be a pillar of the franchise going forward. And you talk about, you talk about don't have those expectations, but at the same time, don't be completely shocked if you see that type of upside of a top 3 caliber player, because even though it was the Kings, even though it was probably a mistake at the time, it was definitely a mistake in hindsight. He was selected there for a reason. And so I would just say that, like you said, don't come in with those expectations and don't expect him to come in looking like a guy that was a number 2 overall pick next year.
Right.
However, what you can expect is that he's going to improve and that he should be growing in his game, because I think that with his extra time in Detroit, one area that he definitely needs to be better. And like, I'm not in the same boat as you where I don't have any questions of like, I have questions about his defensive game and if he can grow in that end of the court, because it's a desire thing. It really is. And in Detroit, if they're giving you that type of contract without any options, because that's the other piece of it, it is a all in 3-year deal. You got to defend. You got to show, a desire to defend, especially if you're going to want to play on this team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think defensively, that's the biggest question mark along with staying healthy. And I think too, like let's look at worst case scenario. You can move that contract, $12.5 million. Even, worst case scenario now, if he becomes a damn good player now, it's a steal. So I appreciate Troy taking swings, man, especially in this part of this, like retooling, reviving of the franchise, if you will, not really rebuild. They're looking damn good. But Marvin Bagley is just going to be another piece of the puzzle, man. I'm excited.
Yeah.
And I think playing with other great players that want you to succeed, like Jay Ivey, Cade, Sadiq, and seeing how they work and seeing their approach, it's going to affect him greatly, man. I think that's the best case. And you have Dwayne Casey, which is something, Dwayne is a hell of a teacher, hell of a he teach these guys. He's been doing it for years now with Cade and Killian and Sadiq. Marvin's in the best situation, man. You saw how eager he was to get to Detroit already when he was in those trade rumors. He was liking tweets mentioning Detroit. Like he knows, and he's in a great situation, man.
Well, you'd even argue that it shows faith in Cade and it shows faith in Dwayne Casey as well, to put that kind of investment in Marvin Bagley, that being around this environment, being around these players in this locker room with this culture and this team, that is going to allow him to grow. That's going to allow him to step into that player that they hope that he can be. And I do think that, one thing that interests me and is an interesting prospect. We talk about the Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duran, front court type of pairing. What about Jalen Duran and Marvin Bagley? Having those 2 lob threats, having those 2 long, versatile guys who can go, who have the capabilities or the physical traits to guard guys in multiple positions. I mean, I know with Marvin, it's like, oh yeah, he can do that, but I haven't seen him do it because he just doesn't have that defensive he just doesn't do it. So he certainly should be able to, though, with his physical traits and attributes. He certainly should have that ability. But I'm definitely excited to see what he does. And with that, I think, it is the onus on, ultimately his role in this team is going to be decided by what he does. And I would argue that there should be the expectation for him to maybe start opening night this year because of the deal that he got. But also, I think just because of the day one things that we know that he can bring as far as the offensive end to the Pistons. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it too. Check it out if you haven't already. We guessed our starting lineups for the Detroit Pistons, and he was in there for me. I know I slightly lean livers. I was bouncing back and forth because I'd love to see Bagley's production off the bench as well. I think he's a player you could plug anywhere, but if defensively he figures it out and he locks in, my God. I mean, that's like you said, you can have Duran, which will honestly alleviate some pressure defensively for him because you have an anchor in the middle. But even playing with guys like Isaiah Stewart, I mean, this whole team is so versatile, and that's what Troy's going for, the athleticism. And Marvin brings a lot of those tools, so he's a great fit.
And then the ultimate question: do you think Marvin Bagley in the teal is going to dominate? What do you think of Marvin Bagley in that teal? Because
Different.
It's going to be good.
Oh yeah, he'll be different. The teal brings out the best in all of us. I've heard. All right.
Oh yeah.
Because we won so many games in the teal.
The teal is the greatest reveal. That's all I'm gonna say. But with that, what do you think of Marvin Bagley? Do you expect that he's gonna have a resurgent year with the Detroit Pistons? And what do you think Pistons fans should expect of him in general? Please let us know in the comment section down below. But ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, everybody around the world, that is going to do it for today's episode of From Half Court. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure you're subscribed because over 2/3 of you that are viewing aren't, and that's disgusting. Disgusting.
Despicable.
You said it better than I could, Jeff. And with that, we thank you guys so much for tuning in and subscribing to From Half Court. Be sure you do.